Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video book review on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and the book that we are taking a look at today is The Dreyse Military Needle Ignition System by Guy and Leonard A-R-West, brothers out of the UK. This is the second in a trio of books that they are in the process of writing on antique military firearms. The first one was on the Chassepot. We have a video about that book as well, if you're interested. Now, this one follows largely the same format as the Chassepot book. It is not just an academic history, it's not just a collector's guide, it is also a shooter's guide, kind of wraps all three of these sorts of subjects together. So the book begins with basically a military history of the use of the Dreyse. The Dreyse, of course, was first developed in 1841 and continued to see use amongst I think all the German states and principalities up until the Franco-Prussian War. So 1840s through 1870s is really the time period we're looking at here. Unlike the Chassepot, the Dreyse went through some substantial mechanical reconfiguration during its lifespan. So there are a bunch of different varieties, and to the unaccustomed observer, picking up a random Dreyse and trying to identify what it is, well, that's a really daunting task. There are a lot of variations, things like rear sights, changed multiple times on each model, plus there are a whole bunch of different models, so it can be a really challenging task to try and figure out anything about the Dreyse. This is compounded by the fact that prior to the publication of this book, there's very little out there. Even on the internet, if you don't read German, not a whole lot to work with. So, like I said, this starts with like a military history of the use of the Dreyse, which is fascinating to me. It goes into a fair amount of depth when the rifle was used properly, when it wasn't, when it was pitted against muzzleloaders, a lot of interesting detail about both the gun and how people's view of it changed over time. Then it goes through a whole section on basically specifications and details explaining each major model of the gun, and that's particularly valuable. So the whole book, by the way, is illustrated with a mixture of photographs and hand-colored paintings, which are really interesting, done by the authors. So this book has a bit more tabulated data in it than the Chassepot book did, which I like. It still doesn't have like major overarching tables of serial numbers and production dates, but I can understand that being very difficult information to get. What it does have is a lot of detailed technical specifications on each individual model of the gun, and that's really cool. So after that, there's quite a bit, by the way, of like side-by-side pictures of different features. This is the Model A, this is the Model B, and how you can identify them, what the pros and cons were of each change in the overall pattern of the rifle. After we get through that section, there is a section on accessories and kind of ancillary stuff. So training, cartridges, bayonets in particular, identifying unit markings, and then the West brothers are also avid shooters of these firearms. So there's a substantial amount of information in here about how to actually load for these, how you develop the cartridges, how you build the cartridges, and then how the guns handle. They went out and shot something like half a dozen different patterns of Dreyse, and their impressions vary significantly. From the early rifles to the little short-barreled cavalry carbines to the Beck conversions, which, by the way, that system is also covered in here in some detail. So overall, you're looking at about a 160-page book, pretty heavily illustrated, with a lot of information in it, both for the historian and for the practical enthusiast. I can't think of any reason not to recommend this book. It has a lot of good information. Doesn't hurt that it's the only source of this information, but it's well put together. I found it very interesting. You don't have to be a shooter to enjoy the book, and you don't have to be a historian to enjoy the book. There's a little bit of something for everybody. So I have a link in the description text below to Woodfield Press, or Woodfield, the publisher, where you can pick up a copy. It is sold out of the UK, and it is £45 as of this recording. So a little bit on the pricey side, perhaps, for a paperback book, but I think the quality of the information, and certainly the time that went into it, the painting illustrations are really interesting to me. I would have found a really good camera, but the paintings are very cool. They give it a unique character, and they're able to be done in a way that they can really show the specific details that the authors are trying to point out in the illustrations. Anyway, highly recommended. Great new book on the Dreyse. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.